This isn't going to be a lecture. My job is to let you down gently from the pinnacle of perspicacity which has preceded me to the sex and drugs which I'm told are going to follow. So I just thought that I would give you 7 little points about how markets actually work. I'm wearing these, and the first is that they work through voluntary cooperation. I'm wearing these trousers so you can see the snazzy pink thread with which they're repaired. I was in the city of Lanzhou in China, in northwest China, on the edge of the Gobi Desert. It's not a place that very many white faces go to, and I think I was the only one in the city at the time. I had to go to a banquet, and the seam had come off my trousers, and I need to get them repaired. So I strolled the streets for a while, and I came across this little narrow street with a dirt road between high buildings. And on either side, there was a market going on, and it was the most amazing sight. And there were people selling vegetables and fruit and fish and tanks of live fish. You could say, oh, I'll have that one and take it home. Or there's another stall, well, you could take it to the next stall and they'd cook it for you. And then there was a guy coming down the middle, this very narrow street, a guy coming down the middle with on a bicycle, and he had a big tureen of soup behind him, and if you stopped him, he would come and serve you soup. And there were people in stalls with big piles of woks and dim sums and rice bowls and buckets and brushes and everything you could possibly imagine. The whole world was there, live chickens in bamboo cages, and you name it. And but I wasn't very interested in all of that. They were very interested in me. In fact, there was one these stalls. I mean, they're just sort of canvas stalls by the side of the track. And basically, they're mostly run by women. You know, the men are out, they're laborers or tradesmen or whatever. And these stalls are mostly run by women. And of course, they have their little children with them. They sit there all day with their kids. And there was one little kid I remember, he was about this high. And as I walked by, his eyes just went like this. He couldn't believe it. You know, this firstly giant, and secondly white, and thirdly, you know, round-eyed person strolling. So he had to rush back into the store and tell his mum. And then he came out to have another look. It was quite funny. But what I was looking for was somebody who would repair my trousers. And eventually I found one, again in a little stall, and there was a woman there who was sewing. And so I sort of pointed to my trousers. Oh, I didn't have them on at the time. I had them with me, and I pointed to this, and she nodded like that. I didn't speak any Chinese. She didn't speak any English. And then I said, you know, I took out my wallet to indicate sort of how much, and she said 5 yuan, which I think is probably about 5 times as much as a local would have paid. But to me, it was about 50 pence, so it seemed reasonable. And then I pointed to my watch, and she indicated she'd do it right there. So there you are. I didn't know anything about her. She didn't know anything about me. And yet, we both ended up better off by this transaction. Nothing was created. It's the same amount of thread and the same amount of trousers are still in the world. But I'm better off because my trousers are mended, and she's better off because she's got 5 yuan that she can spend on her family. So the first thing you need to know about markets is that they're based on voluntary transactions. And indeed, I'm sure that I'm not as good a seamstress as this young girl was that fixed my trousers. And she's probably not a very good economist. But it's because we are different that we're able to trade. If we were the same, you know, we'd have nothing to exchange. But it's precisely because there's a difference between us that we can both get benefit out of this deal. And that's an amazing thing about the free market, is it's because we're different that we actually end up benefiting each other. Second thing, price system. What's the last thing you bought? Some orange juice. What's the last thing you bought? A sandwich? A book. Any particular book?
It was Woman for Breakfast by Jeffrey.
Good heavens. I take nothing else for breakfast myself. Yes, well, coffee and cigarettes, that's my good breakfast. They say that, people don't have time for breakfast, but you must make time for breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day, bourbon, coffee, and cigarettes. Who could have, if we'd left this up to the Ministry of Central Planning, who would have thought 5 years ago that here, in this part of London, there would be a need for some orange juice, a sandwich, and bourbon for breakfast? You couldn't possibly have predicted that. And yet there they were in the shops at the right time. It's an absolute miracle that we just take for granted that whatever we want in this world, we can go into a shop and there it will be. And there will be just about enough, sometimes they run out at the end of the day, but usually there's just enough there in order to satisfy the wishes of all of their customers, and they don't have huge reserve stocks. What makes that possible? It's quite simple. It's the price system. That if there is a demand for orange juice, people are prepared to pay more for orange juice, then the person in the shop who sells orange juice stocks more of it because there's more money to be made. If other people see that this person is making money from selling orange juice, maybe orange juice has just become fashionable for some reason, there might be some advertising campaign or some actors started drinking it or whatever, but for whatever reason, it indicates to other people that there's something going on here, that there's a demand for this orange juice, and that if they enter this market, start producing orange juice and selling orange juice, they will make money. So they have an incentive. So the market acts as, firstly, it's an indicator that there is a demand there, or that there's a shortage at least. Secondly, it induces people to come into that particular market and supply the good. So what it does is it draws in labor and resources to where they're actually needed. And it does so, just like me and the seamstress, on very little information at all, just core information. I don't know why you wanted orange juice at that particular time, who knows? I don't know anything about your politics and personality and your religion. I don't need to know, and neither does the man who sold you the orange juice. All he needs to know is that you needed orange juice at that particular time in that particular place, and that you were willing to pay for it. And so through that mechanism, the price system, price system, I always say, is a fantastic instant messaging system. It spreads information across the whole world. There are orange juice producers out there in Florida or, I don't know, China, who knows where it comes from, who are producing this stuff, and they will produce more of it because lots of people are going into the shop and buying orange juice, and they're prepared to pay for it. So again, there's nothing sort of perfect about this. People tell you about perfect markets. It's all a load of baloney. There's nothing like perfection in this real world. It works by the fact that there are imperfections. If there was a shortage of orange juice, for example, entrepreneurs would sense that there's a gap here, that there's an unfulfilled demand, and that they would go out to Florida and they would bring orange juice over and they'd package it and sell it in the shops and satisfy that demand. It's because there's a gap, it's because the market isn't perfect that it works. It's because people see gaps and opportunities, and that there is a financial reward for satisfying those demands, those unfulfilled demands. That's what makes the market, that's what drives the market.